KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Erwin Jacobs and by
Hello, good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dwayne Brown. If it seems you're having a harder time making ends meet, you're not alone. A new report says San Diego paychecks aren't keeping up with the cost of living. The Center on Policy Initiative says household incomes fell between 2010 and 2011. CPI says 25,000 people in the county have fallen into poverty. Mayoral candidate Carl DeMaio says he's creating a bipartisan job creation coalition made up of people from across the political spectrum. KPBS Metro reporter Katie Orr says it includes members of the Movement to the Middle group created during the primaries.
At today's news conference, DeMaio was surrounded by Democrats, Republicans, and independents, including businessman Scott Dickey. Dickey was one of the founding members of Movement to the Middle, which originally supported Assemblyman Nathan Fletcher during the mayoral primary. The group stressed cooperation and civil politics, and Dickey says he believes DeMaio will fit that mold as mayor, despite criticism that DeMaio can be polarizing.
You know, his role on city council was about, about pushing the limits and making the rest of his colleagues really think about alternative solutions. And so he had to break a little glass along the way.
But while some members of Movement to the Middle are now backing Carl DeMaio, Fletcher may be on the verge of endorsing Democrats